Hello and welcome to Finance, Energy and Beyond, brought to you by Stanbrook Consulting, a specialist recruitment consultancy for the finance and energy markets. I'm your host Jack Hopper, and in this episode I'm joined by Richard Archer, former Head of Risk at Pay.uk. Richard is a specialist in the risk department and talks us through his journey as well as some career advice for anyone who's looking to get into the risk sector. I hope you enjoy. Welcome, Richard. Welcome to the podcast.
Good to be here.
How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And I think let's start as an intro. Who are you? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Richard Archer. I'm a sort of risk assurance compliance professional. I guess I've been working about 30 years. Live in Amersham, 3 daughters and a wife, and 1 dog.
So you're the only male in the family. They keep you busy, right?
Yeah, even the dog's females. So
brilliant. And look, thanks for sharing. And I think the place that I really wanted to start with yourself is, so obviously you're a risk professional. Where did the journey start for you? What was the start of your career to then now being, I think your last role was head of risk, right? What's the journey been like for you? It'd be really great just to understand a little bit more about risk as an industry and your experience.
Yeah, I didn't start off in risk. I started off doing environmental work. I worked for about 6-7 years for an environmental consultancy, and I moved job to do more environmental work, but the company was called DNV, which is a Norwegian foundation, Norwegian and German foundation now, and they did a lot of environmental work. They did also a lot of other risk work. So I looked around the office when I first arrived and thought, well, that looks quite interesting. Management consultancy is always something that interested me, and risk was obviously as like a core tool that they used to deliver it. And I sort of migrated across, really. I still carried on doing a lot of the environmental work after I joined, but increasingly did more enterprise risk management, project risk work, technical risk management work, and really got into it just because I was in a room full of people doing risk management. And
so you kind of just fell into it? Is that right in saying?
In part, yeah. So I mean, I was a junior guy in the office, so I was still cheap enough to be able to get onto other people's projects, and I go chatting to people about what are you doing, and it sounded a lot of the time more interesting than the work I was doing. So I said, I'd love to get involved, and people gave me opportunities to get involved. And you do one project, you do another one, and sort of develop the CV, the experience. And I was at DNV for about 6-7 years again, and increasingly by the end of it, I was doing almost 100% risk work. And if you learn about risk management, learning in a company like DNV is amazing because they have a lot of internal courses that are just so much better than what you can get otherwise. And I sort of went external as well and complemented that with some risk management training at the Institute of Risk Management, did their diploma. So in a way, I got the best of the internal and the external. I was learning very much at the sharp end.
And that role, so your first ever role, did you go to university?
Yes, did an undergraduate degree and then a postgrad 1 year. Yes, I did.
So from university to your first role, explain to me how that worked. How did you get into that first job?
The first job I ever did, I did by basically writing letters. A lot of my friends did the normal round where you applied to jobs that are advertised. I decided, because I knew I wanted to be an environmental consultant, is that I'd write letters to all the top environmental consultancies. And I thought, show a bit of enthusiasm, and maybe you'll bypass, the milk round and get straight in. And I had a massive file of rejection letters at the start where I wrote to everyone and said, I would like to be an environmental consultant. Would you consider me? And they all wrote back, if they wrote back at all, saying no. So I tried again. I wrote to them all again saying I wanted to do waste management consultancy. And again, I had a similar size rejection letter file. And then one of them wrote back to me again saying, had I considered environmental consultancy? Well, yes, and I had written to them, but they obviously didn't have that letter. They had the waste management letter on file. And so I got the job I really wanted, a company called AEA Technology, which was, a PLC that was really one of the leading firms to do environmental consultancy. So
Wow, just from writing letters, right?
yeah, I just wrote to the people I wanted to work for. And I think when you're young, you're quite cheap. You can, it's not a massive decision for them to recruit someone. And if you're enthusiastic and you've got a good, good background, good degree, why not? They might want to take a chance on you. So as it was, they needed someone tomorrow when I was available. So I was in Edinburgh at the time, drove down and started on the Monday. Yeah.
What a story! What a story! There's something special about that, right? And just showing how relentless you are. Like it was something you really wanted to go for, and you done what you needed to do to try and get that. So thanks for sharing. Appreciate that. And so as your career sort of moved on, obviously I think the reason I got in touch with yourself because your last role was at Pay UK, but you've done lots of different things from the start to your last role there. Fill us in those gaps. What was your journey like?
Yeah, I mean, some people only want to work in one sector and they get quite focused on it. And I can understand there's real benefit from really knowing your stuff. But with risk management, I've always thought it's a generic skill and you can apply it to a lot of different sectors. And that's pretty much what I've done. So I started off doing renewable energy, which wasn't risk management, but then went to a consultancy that allowed me to work with all different sectors. So major hazard industries, oil and gas mining, public sector in the UK, law firms, all around Europe and beyond. I think I did training courses in risk management in almost every continent of the world, apart from Antarctica. Did one training course in Venezuela, which was 5 months long, or the national oil company there. I only gave 2-3 weeks of it, but they were training up a whole new generation. So I got massive exposure for being in consulting. You learn very fast being consulting. Then went to work for the Wellcome Trust, which is one of the world's largest charitable foundations. After that, I was there for about 2.5 years as their risk manager. I went to BT. Was there again doing things at huge scale. BT is obviously a very large company, rolling out networks and doing massive deals. I was there for about almost 10 years, and then I decided to have a go, join the financial sector. Again, a massive change. Still doing critical national infrastructure, but yeah, a whole new sector, different regulator.
Completely different, right? I think from my knowledge, you've got a few good stories, right? From your time in, especially at BT. Would you care to share some of the stories, some of the projects that you worked on there?
Sure. So when I was at BT, as I said, I did a lot of critical national infrastructure work. There was 800 or so critical national infrastructure contracts in the part I was working with, BT Enterprise. One of them was a company called, it was a contract called ECAS, which was a bit like the UK 999 service, but in Ireland. ECAS obviously serves the Republic of Ireland, and the population is obviously much smaller than the UK. So I think from a risk perspective, it's quite interesting because it's not like the UK where you have your 5 or so call centres. You have massive diversity where you can put them in the UK. In the Republic of Ireland, they just had 2. So you lose one of those and already you're at risk of losing the service. So I did a lot of work going out every few months to work with them, looking at the risks they have and how we can manage them out. And we made a number of changes that we probably wouldn't have, we didn't make in the UK just because we didn't have to. And one of the changes was we introduced a new solution that allowed the call agents to work from home, which at the time, obviously brings in some data risks. But actually, this came into its own when COVID hit, we were able to send everyone home. So rather than being worried about, are we going to lose a centre? What happens if we have to close one? Because obviously people don't want to come to work and there's COVID in the centre. But people could work from home. So a great example where we managed to get the risk out for good reasons. We wanted to reduce the risk, but when COVID came, new situation, it really demonstrated the changes we made were really valuable. So when the UK was there looking at 5 centres, thinking, wow, what happens if we lose one? What happens if we lose 2? you didn't have that conversation at all behind the scenes in Ireland, because we knew we could send everyone home. The UK guys have to work in the centre so they can connect to the switch, but they, you totally free to work wherever they want.
Completely a step ahead of everyone else, right?
Yeah.
Prepared for when COVID happened. And there was one other story I think you've mentioned to me before, and I think our listeners would love to hear it. 10 Downing Street or something to do with Parliament? Ring a bell?
I think you're referring to Fern, the Dexter cow there. Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the consultancy I did was, I guess, setting up organizations to succeed. But there's another area of consultancy which was actually sorting out individual problems. And in this case, the Dexter cow, Fern, had failed a bovine TB test. And lots of cows fail this test every year. The reason this cow is still being talked about is that the owner didn't want the cow to be put down. And it's a heartbreaking story, really. She truly believed, or he believed, that the cow should not be put down. It's a herd test, so it's not brilliantly accurate for individual animals. And the local vet insisted it had to be put down, and he escalated, and even questions of the Prime Minister, questions time on the Fern the cow. So Fern the cow has a huge profile. The media were covering it. And the question was, should this cow be put down? But beyond that, there was a broader question, which was, is the TB test actually fit for purpose? Because the farmer was saying, well, hang on, I don't think my test was carried out correctly. And not only that, I don't think any of them are carried out correctly. So this went much wider than just the cow. All of a sudden, people are saying, well, is this test that all these animals get put down for fit for purpose? So we were asked to go and watch some vets carry out the test. And it dawned us pretty early on that approach wouldn't work, because if you watch someone, they put their best foot forward, they get it right. And if you want to check for rule breaking, and you just have someone looking over your shoulder, well, surprise, surprise, you're not going to break the rules that time. You're going to get it right. So what we decided to do was to hold some risk workshops. And we actually borrowed a methodology from Shell on rule breaking to try and give us some structure. And it's a nice example of how risk management can be used to solve a problem, because we looked at all the risks for failure that are associated with the test. There's a number of steps to the procedure, and we looked at each step in turn. And ultimately, we made a conclusion. I mean, it's on the if you ever Google, I don't know, DMV bovine test review, you'll come up with a final report. And it's just an example of using risk management to answer a problem, because without that work, you wouldn't have really been able to answer the question, is the test for purpose? You get high level statements or a few anecdotal stories, but this is a sort of detailed work that gave it some weight. And the story went away at that point. And the part was that we could help answer some of those questions.
It was really interesting. And then how did you go from your work in BT, British Telecoms, to then working in Pay UK, completely different industry? Why did you make that transition? And how did you find it working in the finance sector?
I mean, I've always liked doing things which were quite new. So I'm quite attracted to actually the different. And I've been at BT about 10 years, so probably overdue for a change. Went to work with some people who I really, really liked. Found the sector quite interesting. It's obviously a whole new way of doing things in the financial sector. So I think the financial sector works a little harder than the other sectors. I think it's fair to say. But I was quite interested to apply what I knew in another sector, because I used to know about critical national infrastructure. The company I worked for ran critical national infrastructure. So there's a lot of crossover. Very, very, very busy time. I was there for almost 2 years. Yeah.
And is it something you'd go back into, the finance industry? Have you got some learns from the finance industry?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it's financial sectors do take risk management to a different level. They do have a massive rigor over everything. When I was at BT, risk management was very much lean and liberating. BT was more concerned with making not innovating quick enough as much as not making errors. So very much designed to move fast. But when you're looking after people's money, unsurprisingly, there's massive controls over that. You can't lose £1 anywhere. So quite different. I think my next job's going to be in the corporate sector. Yeah, it was an interesting experience.
And so explain to me, so you were head of risk at Pay UK?
That's right.
What did that role mean, and like who are your stakeholders? Were you interacting with a lot of different of the UK banks and the challenger banks? What was your role there, and what did you have to do?
So I work for Pay.uk, which runs the payment systems, BACS, faster payment systems. And risk management is obviously inherent to that, and that we need the systems to be robust and resilient. We have to manage the risks not only within Pay.uk but the payment system. So the risk team, which I headed up, worked with the rest of the business to really make sure that we understood the risks to the systems and managed them well. And obviously the regulator, the Bank of England, stayed very close to it. But you imagine if you moved some money to someone, you kind of expect it to work, and you need it to work everywhere and always. And the risk management's largely set up to deliver that.
So it's interesting. I mean, even when I first heard about it, you just send a payment to someone, you don't think anything of it, right? And there's this whole infrastructure, teams who are sort of monitoring the whole process. But for consumers, it's just so easy, right?
Yeah, and that's a measure of success. I mean, you don't want to talk about a train company, you only do when it goes wrong. It's the same with payments as well.
Interesting. And your new role, is it going to be completely different, or are you still focusing on risk?
Yeah, it'd be risk and compliance. I mean, although I move around different sectors, risk is sort of the core to what I do. It's what I've developed. So you'll still be in risk, another head of risk and compliance role probably.
Well, congratulations as well. I think from your story, what I really liked was, so your last role was in finance, but you didn't start in finance. And I think it's just to open up the eyes of some of the listeners. You don't have to be wedded to a certain industry. You've got some really great skills that are transferable, which you can move into a firm which is a completely different industry.
Yes, whether it's energy, finance, something else. If you've got risk management under your belt, that's a core skill for all these sectors. And why not move around, experience what it's like to work in different sectors?
Yeah, I'm sure you learned a lot from working in different industries. I'm sure it's grown you as a person. But
yes, I have. Done big projects in mining, oil and gas, public sector, quite a wide range of different sectors. People often think, as I said before, that one sector is unique and no other sectors like it. But the more you work in different sectors, the more you realise that they're all facing pretty similar problems. Yes, the technology is different and the terms are different, and you do have to have the curiosity to understand it. But I think more people should move around than they do. Some people spend, their entire career working in one sector, going deeper and deeper into it. And but the funny thing is, sectors move on as well. So when I first joined BT, people who'd worked at BT all their lives didn't really benefit from the knowledge they gained in the first 10 years because the technology was totally different.
Absolutely. The world was changing, right? Completely. Yes. But I suppose risk is at the heart of any business, and every single business is going to need someone who can manage the risk for their company. So I'm sure AI is not coming for your job, right, Richard?
Not yet. But yeah, I mean, even if you're not in risk, everyone needs to understand about it. And if you've got it as a skill, as an expertise, it can help you be even better at what you do, whatever it is. And it doesn't take many days to get the basics. Once you can do that and add it to what you're doing, I'm surprised more people don't get involved. You don't have to spend years learning about it. But the place to learn about it is often, if you do want to do it as a career, I think it's the consulting firms. And it's hard to learn risk management from a book. If you want to learn about risk management, make sure you learn it from the best. Because there's a lot of bad practice out there, and you can easily learn. If you're still learning, you don't know what the bad practice is. The Big Four, a lot of the other really big consultings, or someone who's been in the industry for a long time, you can work from something like that. That's the way to do it, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, I think you've answered my question. I was going to ask you if there was someone that was looking to get into the risk industry as a whole, what advice would you give them? But I think have you answered that, or is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think it's trying to get the best of all bits. Some people start by doing a 3-year degree in risk. I personally would probably start working in a risk field at the sharp end. You learn a lot from the sharp end. If you have something that doesn't work, it clearly, you won't have much success with it, and then you'll change tack. And it's those practices that are tried and tested, the ones you really want to learn about, not the theory from a textbook. If you look at a firm, I went to DMV. If you work in a top firm, you can supplement that with learning outside as well. That's a really good way of doing it. But anyone who doesn't want to do it as a career, there are a few courses you can go to, 2-day training courses. But probably easiest, I think, is just to work with someone in the firm who knows how to do it. Ask for their help, see how they do it. Doesn't cost you anything if you just reach out to someone in the company you work for.
And most of the time, so where you've recruited individuals yourself, have you got to have those core risk qualifications in order to do the role? What's your viewpoint on that?
The most important thing is sharp end experience, curiosity to do it. You need a bit of bravery at times because you are challenging senior managers, probing with them about some quite difficult topics sometimes. You want someone who can engage with people. It's not a theoretical subject, it is a very practical one. So you do need people who are able to engage with topics and people. Yes, if they've got qualifications, great. And if they're going to take a senior role, you probably want that. But it's not essential by any means. So just looking for good people when we recruit rather than necessarily a qualification.
It's really interesting because I'm guilty of it previously when I was hunting for jobs. That if I saw a certain qualification I didn't have, it may have put me off. So it's interesting to hear someone of your seniority who it's not everything. For some roles it may be useful, right? But it's not absolutely everything.
Yeah, I mean, when I used to recruit for consulting firms, we didn't really apply roles. We just looked for good people. If I could find 5 good people, I recruit 5 people. It's not like I had 5 roles to fill. And if I had wanted to recruit 5 and only could find 2, I'd only recruit 2. So it's very much people-led rather than role-led. But yeah, there's a war for talent out there. And if you find someone who's good, you grab them with both hands.
Absolutely. And right, so I've got a couple of questions here for yourself. So what advice would you give a younger Richard?
I would probably say to myself, reinforce the message that know what you want and go and get it. In that, people have 40 years in a career, and if it's something that first seems a little bit slow, don't worry about it. You will get there. You may take longer than other people or whatever, but know what you really want to go for, and just be lasered on it. If you don't know what you're going for, as most don't, it's about trying to take good opportunities as you come along. I started deciding I want to do environmental work, and then I saw something else that I thought would really suit me. So great, take opportunities as you go through the career. So but don't worry about the progress. Sometimes in my career, I was there thinking, well, maybe I need to move a job, to move things a bit faster. Looking back on it, a lot of the time, I think it was very good to do as I was. I was consultant for 6-7 years. I learned every year I was in that. I learned a huge amount. So glad that I did it at the pace I did it.
Thanks for sharing.
But I would say find the good people, and if in your first 5 years of career, find the good people and stay close to them and learn from them, because that's the knowledge you'll take for the rest of your career. And while you're young, you can go around the different experts and work closely with them. So find somewhere where these good people are, and stick close to them and learn and soak it all up.
And in your experience, if you could pick one individual from your network who inspired you, who would that individual be, and why would you just pick them?
I mean, when I was at DMV, I could mention quite a few people there, but there was a guy called Mark Bolt who got me into risk management. He had a desk a bit away from mine and was very happy to involve me in his projects. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have got into risk management at all. So for that, I'm ever grateful, and I very much learned from the best. He was a brilliant facilitator. So but there are many others at DMV too that I work closely with. But I'll pick Mark because he got me into risk management, really.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Big shout out to Mark. Okay, so look, that brings us to the end of the podcast. I'd like to thank you, Richard. And lastly, if any of our listeners would like to get in touch with you and learn a little bit about risk, what's the best way of them contacting you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, so reach out there. Send me your phone number. Let me know. Have a chat. Have a coffee. I'm very happy to help anyone.
Thank you, Richard. I really appreciate your time, and we'll speak soon.
Okay. Thanks, Jack.